And welcome into another edition of the Orange and Blue Report presented by the UVA Health System. My name is Dave Koehn and I'm joined by Jeff White as we break down Virginia going into its next home game on homecomings weekend. Here comes the Eagles of Boston College, a team that Virginia amazingly hasn't played since 2010, even though it's a conference foe. It's been 7 years, and suffice it to say, much has changed since these two teams played one another. And for Boston College, coming off of their biggest win of the season, Virginia, meanwhile, coming off of a 4-game win streak, trying to make it 5 wins in a row. This figures to be an interesting match, a very physical, hard-nosed kind of football game.
It does, and not only is Virginia on a 4-game winning streak, another huge storyline in this is that another win would make the team bowl eligible for the first time since 2011. The players and coaches are acknowledging that fact. They're trying not to make too much of it, but that's out there, and I think the sooner they get to the 6-win mark, the happier they'll be because they have loftier goals than that.
Well, I mentioned the fact that this figures to be a pretty hard-nosed affair. Well, why is that? Well, for Boston College, it's because they have a lot of downhill runners. At no point in the season was that more evident than it was a week ago, as Boston College pulls off the upset at Louisville, thanks in large measure to 272 yards rushing from the freshman running back, A.J. Dillon. Boy, he can get it done in a number of different ways.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to put a lot of pressure on the defense to tackle, to wrap up well. Arm tackles will not get it done against a guy like that. We saw in the Louisville game that he's got outstanding vision. He's big, he's fast, probably not game-breaking speed, but he's certainly fast enough, and just a really strong runner, probably reminiscent in some ways of James Conner, who had a terrific career at Pitt.
And from Virginia's perspective, the other thing you have to take into account, Malcolm Cook. He's not playing in this game again, so Virginia doesn't have that traditional base look in terms of the linebacking core. Will be interesting to see how they scheme this team against a bigger, more downhill approach.
Yeah, I mean, in recent games against teams that pass more than they run, Virginia's been able to play a nickel package almost exclusively on defense with Chris Moore as that fifth defensive back. He is the Sam linebacker right now, but he only weighs about 210 pounds, where Malcolm Cook is closer to 240. So, you know, that will put some pressure on the defense. I think they've had a week to prepare for this. They know what's coming. They know the importance of tackling and getting the guy stopped immediately.
Mentioned the fact that the run game can set up the passing game. Also made note of the fact that it was a freshman running back. Here's a redshirt freshman quarterback, Anthony Brown. Left the game a week ago, has been up and down, did practice this week. He's thrown 51% of his passes, been able to complete, but he's thrown more interceptions than he has touchdowns this season. He's not the kind of guy who typically has been beating teams with his arm alone, but he is a threat, particularly if you're not paying attention. It goes without saying, Jeff, that this is the kind of game where you're happy to have two cornerbacks like the two you have right now in Bryce Hall. And of course, what Juan Thornhill have been able to do as a pair, those guys have been able to play man defense. They've been able to lock teams down and allow the rest of that defense to load the box up a little bit more and take some risks you wouldn't otherwise be able to make.
Yeah, this is probably as good a set of cornerbacks as I can remember Virginia having. I mean, there have been some individuals who may have been better, but to have a set like this really gives the rest of the defense opportunities to make plays that it wouldn't be able to if they didn't have that kind of confidence in them.
So that's the Eagles' offensive attack. On the other side of the football, well, it's a familiar face returning to Charlottesville. Folks remember him, Jim Reed, former defensive coordinator here at the University of Virginia under Mike London, also the head coach at Richmond. He's got ties to the Commonwealth, and he's done a great job with his Boston College defense. They were in the top 10 a year ago in 8 categories nationally, and this year they've been pretty solid again.
Yeah, and if there's one guy on that defense to keep an eye out for, it's their defensive end, Harold Landry, who last year led the nation in sacks. I think he had 16 and a half. He's something Virginia's offensive linemen will have to be aware of.
One other thing to mention, in terms of Landry, he has been dinged up. They said he played at about 50% last week due to an ankle injury, so we'll see how effective he is able to be this week against Virginia. But bottom line, a guy who picked up 16 and a half sacks last year was going to be paramount for Virginia to protect the quarterback, Kurt Benkert, as it always is.
It will also be paramount for the offense to finish drives, which it really wasn't able to do well against North Carolina last week. Virginia came away with a win. It was happy about that, but you know, when the offense went back and looked at how it played, it left a lot of points, a lot of yards out there on the field.
Not to mention, in terms of third down situations as well, Virginia just 4 of 16 on third down a week ago. They'd been hovering right around 50% leading into that game last week, so we'll see if they can get back on track in that regard. That's just a couple of things we'll be looking for in this matchup for Virginia. Coming up on Saturday, it is a 12:30 kickoff, homecomings weekend at Scott Stadium. We hope to see you there.